Joining us, thank you, Savannah. Jim Cooper, Democrat out of Tennessee. In Nashville, he's one of 52 Blue Dog Democrats. Jonathan Capehart with us, as always, and delightfully so. Good morning to you, Mr. Capehart. Michelle Bernard making her first appearance with us, CEO of Independent Women's Forum and MSNBC political analyst. Welcome. Nice to see you. Good morning. Representative Cooper, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts first on some of these poll results.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think once the public understands more about the different options, and nobody should force anybody to do anything. This is a free country. Once people understand the real choices, I think they'll see that the president's exactly right. The status quo is unsustainable. We have to do something because the current system is not working. And two, that there are a lot of good choices out there where we can improve people's health care choices so they can pick their doctor and their hospital and live longer and healthier. So this is ultimately a good news story, but a lot of folks don't understand it that way so far.
And what would you focus people's attention on so that maybe they see the world a little bit more the way you do?
Well, I've always said that health care has to be bipartisan. Now, it's painful sometimes to work with folks across the aisle, but I've done it successfully for decades. It can be done. It's a little more effort, but it's worthwhile. And people back home want to know that they're going to be okay regardless of politics, because when you're sick or injured, the last thing you want to have to think about is politics. Yeah. And as a practical matter in the U.S. Senate, it's going to take 60 votes to pass a bill. Yeah, that's the bottom line. So we have to have a strategy that gets to 60.
You say it has to be bipartisan. How do you respond to elements in your own party that say this is something that will get done with a public option, whether the Republicans want to play or not? In other words, if this goes straight down partisan lines, whether there's threats for primary contests for Blue Dog Democrats, you know what the rhetoric is. How comfortable are you with that rhetoric?
Well, it's really not an ideological question. It's a question of how you pass a bill. And the law is, in the Senate, it takes 60 votes. So how are we going to get to 60 votes? It's going to take some Republicans to do that because Senator Byrd has been sick, Senator Kennedy has been sick. We don't have 60 Democratic votes in the Senate. And I really think if you want a good bill, a bill that will lift the president's popularity ratings, it's got to reach out to all Americans. That's what he did in his campaign. It was an inclusive campaign. He won a tremendous number of independent and Republican voters. We shouldn't lose that progress. There are some bipartisan approaches out there. They have not been popular with House or Senate leadership so far. But the Healthy Americans Act is one good example. The Wyden-Bennett bill, the SU-Emerson bill. Those are some approaches that have always had a lot of Republican support. Why can't we consider those?
Listen, now you sound like me, Congressman. Why can't we consider those? Well, I ask that question every day. I have yet to get an answer. I'm curious how you deal with threats from Howard Dean and others in the Democratic Party that say, listen, either get on board with the public option or we'll give you primary challenges next year. We will and already are launching advertising campaigns against you as being basically a blockage to meaningful health care reform. How do you contend with that, and will that ultimately bend the Blue Dogs to the will of the deeper left?
Well, as you know, there are many different ways to define a public option. I've always been open to a public option. I actually think Senator Chuck Schumer's approach is the best. Let's have a robust public option, but on an absolutely level playing field. Senator Schumer was right. There are about 18 ways to define it. There are about half of those that are probably completely acceptable to most Americans, regardless of politics. Half are probably more worrisome. So why don't we get down to specifics? So far in the debate, we just talked about a robust public option. What does that mean? Well, the leading article on this was written about 9 months ago by a professor from Yale and Berkeley, Jacob Hacker. And that's a very interesting article, but that's not the only approach. Right. I could make a good argument to you today that Blue Cross is pretty much like a public option already. They have a near monopoly in most states. They're heavily government subsidized. What's the difference between that and a public option? Yeah. The co-op option is interesting, too, because that's a legacy of the New Deal. It works real well across 3/4 of the land area of America for electricity distribution. It could be a mechanism that we could use for health care very successfully. The number one health plan in America just is Group Health of Puget Sound, a cooperative.
Yeah, your point ultimately on the partisan aspect of this is that even if there are those that would like to see the Democrats go it alone, that's not possible in your mind because of the structure in the Senate.
It's numerically not possible. Yeah. You know, we don't have 60 votes in the Senate of healthy senators. So how are you going to get to 60 votes? You've got to have some Republicans. So it's just a matter of arithmetic. It's not ideology.
Understood. Congressman, a pleasure. Thanks for the time. We'll talk to you later.